Hello everyone and welcome back to EXA Season 10 Division 2 for the opening round of the season at Spa-Francorchamps. The infamous Belgium circuit is 4.3 miles containing 20 turns, 9 to the left and 11 to the right, with 2 DRS zones completing the circuit. And it is a circuit to behold, one of the most esteemed circuits on the Formula 1 calendar, with hundreds of infamous moments over the course of its history. With like the 1998 pile-up in full wet conditions on the opening lap, which we saw Jordan take their maiden victory in Formula 1. We've seen battles between Rosberg and Hamilton, between Set and many other great rivals as well over the decades, and title fights really changed the course at this circuit. We'll be seeing that the championship be beginning tonight, and we will be seeing the first course of action for the 20 drivers in the full-time championship, plus our reserves that are racing tonight. I'm your commentator, Jamie Jackson, and I am your sole commentator this evening as we get into 18 minutes of qualifying and 22 laps of action. However, we have got a couple of things to go over first, such as the calendar for this season. We did miss Australia, as that is a Division 1 only circuit for the start of the season. So we start here in Belgium before we move to the Circuit of the Americas next week. Before we have a quick break week in before we move to Monaco, the most infamous of circuits, not just on the Formula 1 calendar, but in history, steeped with history, that one. And that will be a test of every single driver who participates. After that, we have Austria and Canada for the 4th and 5th rounds before heading into the United Kingdom for the British Grand Prix on December 9th. Then Mexico will be following that before we have another break just over the period between over Christmas. We'll be back for the final 3 rounds of the season with Saudi Arabia, Brazil and Abu Dhabi completing the season. A 10-round season nonetheless, and an excellent one to do so. We'll see who will take the title this season, but we are going out onto the circuit. Loading into the session now for qualifying. 18 minutes of qualifying, 22 laps of action. This will be an exciting one as we go through the day. Just make sure everything is running. I hope everything is running well. I am just sorting through everything. And now we are going to start this session. There we go. I think everything is working. I'm just testing out a couple new things tonight as well, so I do apologise if things just seem a little bit on the edge. It has been a little while since I have commentated over not just the EXA, but in a couple of weeks in general. So it is going to be an interesting time just to get ourselves back into the swing of things before we go into the fully fledged part of the season, the meaty part of the season. So this 8-minute qualifying session, we'll see some new drivers and some old from the EXA grid, whether that's Division 1, 2, seasons ago, or to the modern day. We've got McLaren sporting Riley Blunt and Gianluca Norfolk, Haas sporting Vettel and Brandon Clark, Alpine sporting Diego Ferrer and Miliensky, Red Bull sporting Jarno Vega and Herman Polivaskov. I do apologise if I get names wrong. This is literally the first time I'm seeing most of these names. Mercedes sport Lucas Serra and Red Mears, with Williams sporting Aaron Ramírez, and Williams only have one driver, Aaron Ramírez, tonight. Ferrari have also only got one driver tonight with Claudio Diaz, while RB sport Gabriel Moya and Alberto Barros. And then Aston Martin, the only team left, a full team of Lorenz Patton and Matthew De Jesus. If I do get your name wrong, I do apologise, but we are going into the session now, and we are going all guns blazing with the 18-minute qualifying session. I believe there is a little bit of cloudy weather, so everyone's going to try and get some laps in early. If there's potential for rain in this early part of the session, we could absolutely see some major differences as everyone piles out the pit lane. It is going to be a very interesting one this session. We've got the Williams currently out front as it is spitting with rain on this opening session of the season, and everyone is gunning round for those to get a lap in before the track gets too wet. It is going to be an exciting session in his opening minutes, and it's going to be frantic as everyone goes from 0 to 100. Let's do this, ladies and gents. We're going to go down towards the bus stop chicane, where we will see the Williams of Aaron Ramirez taking the getting himself prepped for the opening, well, his probably first and only fighting lap for all these drivers, because that rain is going to certainly cause havoc for all these drivers. It's just a matter of time, because on this longest circuit on the calendar, that rain will be more effective, because over the course of the lap, it does take longer for these drivers to complete, and that rain will settle at various parts of the circuit longer and shorter as we go through Eau Rouge and Radium. Up toward the Kemmel Straight now, as we go down on DRS up 208 miles an hour for the Williams, switching to 210 before breaking about the 100-metre board, before we go into Le Com for 7, 8 and 9, as the Williams just tries to get themselves a solid enough lap while everyone scrambles to get a lap in. Through Brussels now of turn 10, and then we go into the formerly named no name corner as we go through 11, gets on the power very nicely there. He's just got to get a clean lap in, no invalidations necessary. You need to get a quick lap, but you also need to make sure you do not ruin it by going invalidated. Through Pool we go, and he's done quite nicely before going through turn 13 and into campus of turn 14 of campus, before going up to Stavlo on turn 15 now into the right hander. That's a decent job there. No major mistakes, no major errors from the Williams so far, before we go up through towards the Coombe Ferra as we go up towards Blanchimont, as the ERS is now being burned by the Williams. It's not really a much problem in terms of ERS percentage at this circuit. It's the green bar, the amount of deployment you're allowed per lap. Changes depending on what you use, what sort of mode you're using, but when using hot lap and overtake, you cannot burn it consistently. As we go up towards the line after the exit of turn 20, 143.3 is what everyone needs to beat. The Mercedes up next of Lucas Serra into P2. The Haas is up next before we see the rest of the cars come flying through. No one quite can beat the Williams at the moment, as everyone scrambles to try and get a better lap in. Everyone's saying 143, 144, so 145 for Univega puts him to the bottom of the pile. But Aaron Ramirez just seemed to absolutely fly in that opening session. Get out early, get a lap in. He's half a tenth clear of Lucas Serra, and they're 4 tenths clear of Gabriel Moya, and at the moment that is an excellent job from them. Is anyone else going to be able to set a time? These guys were nowhere near in terms of being on close to the pack, and that really affected a million skate. And Herman Polikov seems to have really struggled over 45.4 and 45.5. That track seems to have become a little bit too wet at this point. And now, that is crucial for these drivers, as now the quali session is, well, it's still wet, but it's not quite raining that hard at this stage. And if it does begin to dry out later on, we could absolutely see these drivers coming, starting to go out again and try and get better lap times in, because at the moment it looks very much like Aaron Ramirez, by just the skin of his teeth, has taken visual pole position just because he went out early enough, got the lap in, no major errors. That's the crucial thing. No errors. Yes, Lucas Serra, who was, I think, 2nd or 3rd on that timesheet, coming past. I think he was the 2nd driver to cross the line. These drivers all, by the way, go very slowly due to being on low fuel. They all put minimum fuel in. They all made sure, knew that one lap was what counted. They wanted to minimise any chance of losing time, and they paid the price trying to get to the pit lane. And yeah, it's been a very, very very interesting start, not just to the session but to the season, as now we just let everyone come into the pits and just relax himself. So let's run through the running order. We've had all drivers apart from Riley Blunt set a time, the McLaren being unable to get out on track, or get a lap time in, despite everyone going out on track. He decided to pit. I wonder if he got an invalidation causing him to end his day. But Aaron Dominguez leads the way ahead of Lucas Serra. Gabriel Moya and Claudia Diaz sit third and fourth ahead of Lorenz Patton and AZR Vettel. Matthew De Jesus sits in seventh ahead of Red Mers, Brandon Clark and Diego Ferrer, who's to round out the top 10. Alberto Barros, Gianluca Nolov, Emiliansky, Herman Polyakov, Unai Vega, and Riley Blunt are out. 16 drivers on the grid today. It seems like very, very solid like that. These guys are very, very much close to Division 1 pace, if not on it. A lot of the top end drivers, we'll see whether that has an effect. But all these drivers now are just going to have to sit it out and just wait until whether that dry spell maybe later on in the session comes. If not, the intermediate weather, it may be, if it is intermediate maybe in the race, would it be best to go out for intermediate practice without risking crashing into the wall? Unfortunately, you've got a few areas where that is a big risk. At Eau Rouge and Radion, no less. That's a very, very big risk at this stage. And at the moment, everything just calms down for these drivers. I didn't set that up. Let me just quickly set this up. Sorry, ladies and gents. It should come through. So I should just be trying to get some new things sorted and everything. It's just getting a bit new to me. But people are going out on track to test out the intermediate conditions, I guess. Maybe a bit like Sebastian Vettel back in 2008 at Monza, where he was the only driver to really get some sort of intermediate running throughout the practice sessions, because no one really wanted to use the intermediate because they thought it was going to be dry throughout the race. And by the time it got to qualifying and the race, Sebastian Vettel had a very nice pole position in his Toro Rosso, no less, and a race victory just by having that practice in that intense conditions and getting the setup into an optimised window when everyone else was unable to get any sort of practice. But you can see Unai Vega is gone out on the intermediate tyres. I assume a couple of drivers are just going to use this as practice. We're going to get at least a couple of drivers going around on the circuit for now, as we now go through to just see what these are. See, as half the drivers just decide they're going to retire, they're not going to need to use the intermediates, but some drivers just use it as a little bit of practice, giving us a bit of showboat around here as well. But yeah, we're going to see what these drivers can do. We've got as at the moment, we're just going to watch as the drivers, the 4 or 5 drivers that are going to be on track, 6 drivers by the time the McLaren of Gianluca Nolva just get himself out onto the circuit. We'll see whether these drivers have any sort of issue in the intermediate. Someone who has is Lorenz Patton. The Aston Martin has gotten off on the exit of No Name, and very much luckily to get away with any sort of damage. However, very much grass in his tyres, and not what you want to be doing in these conditions too much, considering that he's going to get very close. Gentlemen, calm it down. You're in a qualifying session. Do be very careful at what you're doing. Very much lovely drift though from Lorenz Patton, keeping that keeping a very nice drift through there. Fair enough to the gents. These guys just wanted to have a little bit of fun, I guess, putting themselves for a nice little bit, I guess not even practice to some extent for him, just getting a little bit of a drift on, getting a little bit of Tokyo drift. It's not too bad in terms of entertainment for us, as I believe a couple of drivers have gone into the pit since. Well, very close there. Lorenz, be careful as the Aston Martin just spins up his tyres. I dare say that was very, very close to disaster as he entered the pit lane. But he carries on to fight another day. Currently P5. Luckily, if he does crash, I don't think it will affect him too much, but we don't know. We now see Luca Serra going round. P1 goes a bit wide on the exit. That's now the Mercedes is just getting himself prepared. Lorenz Patton decides to retire from this session. Um, Unfortunately, it's very we're not really able to at this moment in time really discuss who is going to be top end dog because we don't really have much information at this stage in terms of who is truly fastest, because yes, you did have the opportunity to see who went out and done that one lap pace. Yes, that is crucial. However, the rain was coming. The rain really cost these across some drivers, and it was led us to a very mixed up grid, I believe, in terms of driver, which will lead to a very exciting race at the very least. As we now go through the first corner down towards Eau Rouge and Radium. Lucas Serra at least putting some laps in. The Mercedes doing a nice enough job to just keep. I kept in, got any validation there, but doing at least keeping us a bit of entertainment here. As a couple more drivers peeling into the pit lane with only about 5 minutes to go in this session. Yellow flags. Oh yeah, that's for the pit lane. That's fine. As we continue on through the last couple minutes of this session before we get to our 22 lap race, just 5 minutes to go. We'll see. As Division 2 really kicks off. Like I say, we've got a few different very different tracks on the calendar this season. Let's quickly go back to it. He started at Belgium. High speed, yes, very technical, lots of elevation. Same with Kota in the next round, but in a very different circumstance. Monaco, the trickiest of them all, as they go through the king. Two becomes the king of the street circuit. Austria, complete flip to Monaco. Apart from circuit size, in terms of track length, they're the most similar. They're two very similar in terms of lap time, but very different in terms of how you get there. Austria, high speed, very DRS zoned. Absolutely exciting for racing. Then we go to Canada, chicanes galore and one of the most infamous circuits on the calendar in the Montreal Street Circuit. Then we go to Britain. Well, it's very much the complete opposite to how we start this season, where we've got so much elevation here. Basically, not too much on the British circuit, if any. Pretty much just only flat. It's pretty flat circuits on airfield base. Then we head to Mexico, where it is the highest elevated circuit on the calendar at over 3,000 feet above sea level, which really affects engine temps and tyre temps and everything else due to the low amount of air resistance. Saudi Arabia, which is complete opposite. It is I think it is actually the lowest in terms of track elevation. As we everyone else retires from session, we'll quickly jump to the game scene just so we can get some information. So that is Aaron Ramirez on pole, ahead of Lucas Serra, Gabriel Moya, Claudio Diaz, Lorenz Patton, AZ Vettel, Matthew De Jesus, Redmers, Braden Clark, Diego Ferrer, Alberto Barros, Gianluca Nolfo, Milinsky, Herman Polyakov, Unai Vega, and Riley Blunt. Round out our grid for the 16 drivers that will compete for the next 22 laps. Quickly before we go finish this, Saudi Arabia, the lowest sea level circuit, one of the lowest sea level circuits in the calendar. High speed, technical, and walls that can certainly take you out. Brazil, one of the most infamous circuits in the calendar. Lots of elevation there and lots of fun for the drivers. Lots of overtaking opportunities, but very technical nonetheless. And then we had to Abu Dhabi in the Middle East. What has become a very exciting track in terms of racing on this game, and in real life, partially in real life, since they made changes, particularly with the two new hairpins back ending on either end of the two sets of straights for chicane in between in sector 2. It becomes very exciting. That is in January. Like, we are in October. We are starting the season in Belgium, and we'll go to this grid. Dry weather to start our race, but very overcasty nonetheless. It is going to be a very exciting race as we go around the circuit, the Spa Francorchamps 22 laps of the circuit, and we've got a couple of drivers going for very different strategies. Got mediums and hards, solidifying the top 13 drivers before we see a soft runner of Polyakov in the Red Bull, who's the only soft runner at the moment, with Unai Vega and Riley Blunt also on the medium and hard tyres. We're seeing drivers just try and adjust their strategies, try and find what is optimised for them, and not just for them, but in comparison to the drivers around them, because you don't want to be stuck in a DRS track when you know you can either use up the opportunity now to run the hards, or use or pull away on the mediums and try and solidify a lead over your rivals with a very, very mixed up grid. It is a wide range of nationalities. I'm just trying to work out how many. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Well, plus international, 11 plus plus an international flag in terms of nationalities on the 16-car grid. Some an absolute wide representation of drivers across the world in EXA Division 2, as we now get ourselves ready for the next. Well, the most exciting part of the season, the 5 red lights we are going to go to. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red lights for EXA Division 2, Season 10. It's lights out of the way we go. Claudio Diaz has got a drive-through penalty for jumping the start. That is very unlucky from the driver in the Ferrari, who goes to the lead before contact between the RB and the Williams. As we go into La Source, the Williams of Aaron retains the lead, while Gabriel Moya is right on his toes. He did hit the back, but not too badly that he is affected either, because they've both taken the lead as we go through Eau Rouge and Radion, as we go up the Kemmel Straight. DRS will not be able to hit, but slipstream is certainly enough for the V-Carb as we go side by side down towards this first chicane, the first proper half braking point of the circuit, as a bit of contact between the Mercedes and the RB has almost sent Gabriel Moya spinning. He's down to 4th as Lucas Serra has dropped down to 5th. That has allowed a massive gap for Aaron Ramirez to take the lead. Lorenz Patton in P2 ahead of Gabriel Moya and Lucas Serra. Claudio Diaz has got a drive-through penalty, but 1.6 seconds does Aaron Ramirez lead, and at the moment he has an excellent lead nonetheless, side by side between Redmers and Claudio Diaz. Redmers took P5, so does Diego Ferro. Take it off Claudio Diaz in P6. The Ferrari dropping down the field after getting a drive-through. I wonder if he thinks at this stage it is not worth the risk fighting too harshly, because that drive-through penalty is going to certainly affect him later on, well, in very, very short form. But Lorenz Patton is now at the P2 ahead of Gabriel Moya, and Lucas Serra. Redmers is now making it a P4 and P5 position for the Mercedes pit squad. Is now Diego Ferra, Claudio Diaz, Matthew De Jesus, Gianluca Noffel and Milianski round out our top 10, but we're going to see battles further back between as we go 2 by 2 through the bus stop chicane. The Mercedes, the Aston Martin and the Ferrari pull into pit lane 3 wide back there. Between the drivers who are fighting over the final points paying position now, as Unai Vega moves up to P10. Riley Blunt up to P11 already. Matthew De Jesus, I think, had damage, and he has retired from the session, as the Aston Martin becomes our first retirement for the season, and that is just on the opening lap. But it's Aaron who leads the way, as we're going to see action between Redmers and Diego Ferra. Diego Ferra has left the session. That is very unfortunate for the Alpine, as we go through the through into sector 2 now. Gianluca Nova moves up the P6. It's now right behind the Mercedes of Redmers, who has a 10-second time penalty for corner cutting and gaining a place. That is very unfortunate. I wonder if that was due to the Alpine of Diego Ferra, who actually ended up losing, disconnected from the session. I wonder if he was trying to avoid that. We'll see what happens later on. We now see the Aston Martin of Lorenz Patton pull away, Aaron Ramirez and Lorenz Patton putting away from the rest of the field, as Lucas Serra and Gabriel Moya put themselves in P3 and P4. Everyone now just settles themselves down as we go up towards Blanchimont for the second time this race, and everything just quietens down a little bit. We now see further back though that it will be a battle merging, because we've currently got Gianluca Noloff. I am going to keep getting names wrong. I apologise again. But the McLaren going to hold a little bit of a train now, pulling out DRS of Red Mers, who sit in P5. Only just. He's trying to pull himself back in. However, these drivers are going to really try and push themselves to pull themselves into DRS range and keep themselves tucked up in each other's DRSs and potentially make the overtake, because otherwise they will begin to lose time. They start losing ground to drivers who are slipstreaming off of one each other, using DRS off another of the faster car in front. As we see, if we look at the positions gained, 6 positions gained as we go to Herman Polyakov and Unai Vega, the 2 Red Bulls making up positions on the RB of Alberto Barros and AZR Vettel for P8 and P10. The Red Bulls putting themselves into points paying positions now. We continue through through sector 2, through No Name for the Red Bull. It's going to be 7 positions gained from Unai Vega, 6 from Gianluca Nolov, Milianski as well, 6 positions gained, 4 positions gained for Herman Polyakov, and 4 for Riley Blunt. This is a very interesting battle. Interesting position gained, and as we see them all just try and find their way through the field. Meanwhile, Aaron Dominguez is going to be looking to try and use his gap over Lorenz Patton, but he's certainly starting to lose that gap. Maybe just use a bit of his extra pace, his gap advantage to pull away, and potentially using his using up a bit more of his tyres, whereas Lorenz Patton is might have more nicely brought his tyres in. We'll see as we go on. We now continue through towards the end, start lap 4. As we continue down towards the rest of the field, we see Gianluca Nolov. He's going to start losing ground to Red Mercy. 2.4 seconds is the gap, as Milianski sets his sight on the Papaya car. Go down the Camel straight towards Lecom. Can the Alpine find their way by it? It's to the inside for the Alpine. He takes P6 away from the Papaya squad, and now can he pull away and pull that 1 second gap over the McLaren, who is on the hard tyres in comparison to the Alpine on the mediums, but which is a defining factor in potentially pace differences, but it could also help him later on in the race when it comes to defending against the McLaren. We now go through towards campus now, turn 4, through 13 and then into campus of turn 14. The Alpine just trying to find themselves away at least from the McLaren behind them. About 5.5-6 tenths is the gap between the two, but he can't quite do enough because he needs to find some pace to get himself back up to the Mercedes in front, as the top 5 have kind of split themselves into a second of their own group here, as we got 2 groups kind of emerging between the packs at this stage. As Diego Ferrer has rejoined, but the Alpine is fairly far behind at this stage. Hopefully for them, they can either regain the time via something that happens later on. Aaron Dominguez leads the way for Williams, head of Lorenz Patton. Lucas Serra and Gabriel Moya are top 4 ahead of Redmers in top P5. Have that 10-second time penalty looms for the Mercedes, due to something that happened earlier. Meanwhile, we're going to see a battle between Gabriel Moya and Lucas Serra. Gabriel Moya moves himself to P3 after sending laps behind the Mercedes, potentially looking to try and maintain and try and move his way out of the field. Gianluca Nolov moves himself ahead of the Alpine, but the McLaren, I'm just going to call him Gianluca, but it's at least I can say that for Gianluca, just tries to help himself on Milianski. And now he's going to try and maybe spent a bit of time just conserving his ERS behind Milianski to try and pull away this very lap. But can he pull out DRS? Is much further along this time. He's now nearly a second out on the Alpine, who is just starting to fall by the wayside. Maybe the tyres on the mediums and hards beginning to cross over. And those hards are starting to look in better sort of shape. You wouldn't expect it to happen this early, but it could always do so. Depends on how hard you push those tyres. And also, tyres can also percentage via incidents. It also goes through walls, but you're never going to hit a wall around here. So it could be a defining factor for them. As we go into the bus stop chicane, he just could not quite get himself out of DRS range of the Alpine, who sits around 9.5 tenths at this moment in time. Yes, there's a very brief DRS zone here. Lock up there for the McLaren of Gianluca. But at the moment, the Papaya car just looking to get themselves enough of a gap. They're not quite out of the DRS threat yet, but they've put themselves into a position where they shouldn't really have any sort of attack or assault from the Alpine of Milianski. Despite him gaining 3 or 4 tenths down the straight, McLaren looks to be in top form. However, the Alpine has actually got broken DRS ahead of Uri Vega, who's also broken DRS ahead of Herman Polyakov. The two Red Bulls in P8 and P9 have done a very solid job to get themselves up the positions very early on. And on lap 6, they look to be in decent form. These drivers are very close in terms of pace. So it could... at this stage in the season, it is a very, very... it's difficult because you've also... A lot of these drivers do not know how each other race, and they're also trying to decipher how quick one another are, trying to get themselves eased into the season, not with just their cars, with their teammates, with each other as rivals, etc. It's a very, very different scenario where you go from league to league at such a high level. We're going to continue on now for the race leader, who currently sits 1.1 seconds ahead of the Aston Martin, 1.2 now as we go into La Source. But the Aston Martin just holding up Gabriel Moya, who sits in his DRS as AZR Vettel retires from the session in the Haas, and Brandon Clark comes into the pit lane and retires as well. As everything really, really settles down into a rhythm for these drivers as they just try and find themselves a way. Just try and find themselves a way to find a gap between from the drivers behind and try and close into the driver in front. But also, it's very, very difficult to do that on a circuit where, while it is so long, it is very challenging to look it up all perfectly when your rivals may not. When all these drivers have put hours and hours into this game practicing, meaning these pace levels are very, very similar. But we'll see with these drivers, just like they're also pinpoint precise as well. And also that's where we're going to see potentially tyre differences really play a factor, because at the moment Lucas Serra and Redmers both currently in the top 5, the two highest run medium runners, might be yes, they will have to pit earlier than the hard runners, but at least we'll get some form of undercut. That'll bring them closer to the hard runners. However, they'll have a lot of deficit in pace by the time the pit stop phases have completed, but they've got to use their pace advantage early on to try and get themselves a undercut of some description. Redmers comes into the pit lane, but will have to serve a 10-second time penalty for the Mercedes, so there'll be no form of undercut there for Redmers, who just has to sit there and watch and wait and just look at his pit crew and just see himself waiting, as it's basically the longest 10 seconds of your life. This is, as you sit around and wait for that. Redmers will continue on the hard tyres for the remainder of the session. I'm not sure how many stops these drivers will do. I'm assuming they're going to do a one stop around here. As we now see Gabriel Moya and Lorenz Patton begin to are still very close, but half a second, Lorenz Patton will be getting some form of slipstream, but also getting a little bit of dirty air off of Ara Ramirez. As the Williams just sits outside of DRS, maybe pacing themselves, all three of them maybe pacing themselves at this stage to try and get themselves through this hard tyre, maybe try and go a lap longer, try and do an overcut maybe, and use the better tyre advantage later on, because it's much more effective on the mediums due to the tyre drop off, particularly later on in the session. But we'll see how that plays out as the RB just continues themselves through Blanchimont and just looks at where the Aston Martin is maybe struggling in comparison, where they are benefiting in comparison, because at this moment in time, yes, you're very similar paced, but it's going to be a very, very different story. Maybe if you've pushed your tyres too hard earlier on, maybe if you learn from the driver in front, and that's the crucial thing, is that if you are sitting behind, you can learn from the driver in front much more than they can learn from you behind. However, something that has happened is Lorenz Patton has got himself into the DRS window of Aaron Ramirez, which is going to help him against Gabriel Moya. Gabriel Moya, I do apologise, I'm speaking as it is Gabriel Bortoletto. That is my apologies. But the top top 6 are really 6 different constructors at this stage, with Mercedes just dropping out temporarily while they go through their pit stop cycle. It'll be interesting to see how each of these work, as all these drivers will be trying desperately to kind of just focus themselves on themselves, really, but because they can't lose focus and think, oh, my rival around me is closing in, I'm pulling away from. Can't lose focus on what is in front of you, because at the moment you really, because the second you start doing that, you start to lose your lose patience. You start to get too above yourself and too ahead of yourself, that then you begin to lose time. You start to make errors, and this is what these drivers have become so renowned for, not in their communities or in this community, is their ability to drive seamlessly and consistently, but also be able to battle hard, race hard, and push each other to the limit. These guys are all very much Division 1 pace, but it's whether they can show it consistently and across the season. However, Aaron Ramirez maybe has used a bit too much of his tyres earlier on, because he's beginning to lose time in terms to Lorenz Patton, who, yes, used DRS there to catch back up, but that could be the defining factor in why he caught back into that DRS in the first place. We're going to see as the... There we go. As we see, Aaron Ramirez just trying to manage themselves still. Yes, they haven't made too much in terms of errors, but Lorenz Patton is maybe just doing that a little bit more in terms of either management of tyres, or maybe just getting themselves that slight bit more confidence, watching the Williams in front of him, learning where he's a bit weaker and adapting to become his strength. That is the crucial part about this at the moment. We now will go through towards... I'm just switching tabs, so that is going to pause. We are now moving towards the halfway point of the race, and that is now becomes a crucial point for these drivers, who are now on aging hard tyres, as they try and push themselves to get to do a one-stop strategy, because it is quite a bit more difficult to some circumstances. A lot of the medium runners have already pitted fairly earlier on in the race, but maybe these drivers know they can get themselves to the end on the in a one-stop windmill. Here comes Lorenz Patton, goes to the outside. DRS, nothing the Williams can do. He takes the lead of the Belgian Grand Prix in Division 2 for the opening round of the season. Becomes our second race leader of the season after Aaron Mingus led the opening 10 laps. However, lap 11 goes to the Aston Martin as the green squad, as the British Racing Green squad try and now pull away, and the British Racing Green driver begins his run of form, and maybe trying to throw a bit of dirty air, a bit of extra tyre temp the way of the Williams, who seems to not be as able to maintain the pace ahead a couple laps ago, and that's ultimately cost a bit of a stat there from Lorenz Patton. He had a little slide, but he managed to keep hold of it. However, 8 tenths just over, covering the top 3, as we will see. Aaron Mingus and the Aston Martin of Lorenz Patton just start to battle, but Gabriel Moya is going to start to, lick his lips a bit. He's going to see himself with a bit of an opportunity here. If these two focus too much on each other, they're going to go side by side at the wrong place. We could see a very different situation. Lock up there from Lorenz Patton on lap 12 into La Source, as we now see maybe the shoot on the other foot. Is there going to be any mistakes from the Aston Martin? Can he hold on in a defensive manner the way he did to Gabriel Moya, but to a different driver this time, in what was our former race leader and maybe soon to be our next race leader again, if he doesn't stick behind him? He does, into Le Combs, as we go through the chicane down towards the hairpin again. Over the halfway mark in this race, and these drivers still got a long way to go, and yet they still yet to stop. The top 8 drivers yet to stop in this race, with Lucas Serra leading the drivers who have already made a singular pit stop. Milianski, the only driver with a penalty now after Redmer served their 10-second. They are right behind them, each other, as Milianski just has the Mercedes to keep them company. We're going to have to keep an eye on that battle as that progresses. The race leader is going to race lead battle continues on, a three-way fight for position. And now these drivers are going to have to try and work themselves out as Riley Blunt becomes the next driver to be full victim to the track limit time penalties. Lock up there from the Aston Martin as we dive through the bus stop chicane. Not so bus stop anymore, is it, as we into the modern era. Diego Ferrer has left the session once again as the Alpine sits in P13 as we go down through La Source, down towards Eau Rouge and Radion, as we make our way up towards the Kemmel Straight, through Eau Rouge, through Radion, as we go up towards the Kemmel Straight, through the Kemmel Straight. DRS enabled for the Williams, for the RB, but not for the Aston Martin. As we go down towards Lecombe, is there going to be any sort of movement from the Williams? Not quite, as the RB is too far back to do anything anyway. As we sit behind in this line of stern moment for the next foreseeable lap, unless there's any form of error from the drivers in front. As we continue on, we're going to see though change for position over back between Alberto Barros and Herman Polyakov, as Alberto Barros moves up to P5 while the Red Bull moves down to P6. Riley Blunt is on the back of the Red Bull as well. Maybe Riley Blunt will try and find a way, but it's a lock up there from the Red Bull, sends themselves around at Brussels before going into no name, as the Red Bull now loses out on 2 positions in a couple corners. Alberto Barros up to P5, Riley Blunt up to P6, and Herman Polyakov down to P7. The Red Bull may be starting to struggle a little bit on their tyres as the drivers continue on through towards the end of their stints. It becomes more and more interesting for them. We now go up towards Blanchimont, down towards the bus stop chicane. As we now switch that off quickly. Oh, there you go. Lorenz Patton, Aaron Maringuez, Gabriel Moya, pull the gap to the drivers early on, but got to be careful because Lucas Serra, who pitted earlier on the alternate strategy, could become a very, very big part in this game, in this race, because at the moment they are very much within the window. I think if I do that, change the gap. Once we see Gianluca and Herman Polyakov in the McLaren and Red Bull pit, 17 seconds, he will take provisionally the lead of the race. We've taken a look at fast laps. Lucas Serra 1:44.9, the only driver who did a 44 lap time so far. That is a very, very good lap from them. In race conditions, meanwhile, we're going to see the Mercedes pass the Scuderia as they move up to P6 on track. Lucas Serra is really starting to show themselves as a potential contender for the race win if they can get themselves far enough in the pit window of the three drivers in the lead. He does have two other cars in front of him, Riley Bunton and Alberto Barros, who yet to pit either, but he's got a couple of second gap to them at least, and hopefully for him we'll be able to find his way by before without too much trouble. We are now going to go through towards Blanchimont, and just another lap of what seeing Lorenz Patton lead the way. Yes, he's only really coming to the end of his third full lap, led 3 3/4 by the end of this lap. He would have led, but they come into the pits, all three of them at the same time. It's about the pit crews now, and a battle of making sure you get your turn in, your braking, and your exits all right for these drivers, and getting away from the pit box as the Aston Martin comes into the pit lane first. The Williams will follow suit, followed by the RB. The Aston Martin seems to get out okay, but do they, in comparison to their rivals? They certainly get part of the Williams as they come out line astern just about, but Lucas Serra takes the lead of the race. Meanwhile, the Aston Martin, Williams and the RB come out second, third and fourth ahead of Gianluca, who in the McLaren is only just behind and has joined this battle for the lead. Bear in mind, Gianluca only pitted a lap ago. He's thrown himself into this race. If they all stayed out a lap later, that could have ultimately cost them all, because Gianluca is on a similar strategy to these drivers, and it would have been much more difficult to pass the McLaren in comparison to the Mercedes. And the battle is going to certainly heat up between the top 5, and at the moment it is going to be Mercedes, Aston Martin, Williams, RB and McLaren fighting it out for victory. As we now go through P1 and down towards turn 13 and turn 14 of campus, the Mercedes now has a 8/10 gap over the Aston Martin of Lorenz Patton. Lucas Serra is going to have to do some very, very difficult battles here, and maybe it will not go his way today in terms of strategy. However, he certainly can put up a fight. We now go up towards Blanchimont for the 15th time in this race. We're on 15 of 22. Is there anything these top 5 can do in this situation? Someone who maybe is looking to have a go is Herman Polyakov, going on the outside of bus stop chicane on Milianski. Takes the position away from the Alpine and moves up to P7. A nice one from him as he now settles in behind the Redmers. But we're going to have to go back to the battle for the lead, because here comes Lucas Serra, here comes Lorenz Patton, Aaron Rominski, Gabriel Moya, Gianluca Noloff is now as the McLaren continues on as the Aston Martin screams past to take the lead, but it's not going to be followed quickly because the Aaron Minguez has taken P2 as the Williams quickly finds his way by, as Gabriel Moy will not be holding back. He dives up, there's a contact between the two as the Williams, the Mercedes and the RB make contact there as they try to fight their way by. Gabriel Moore is desperate to try and get his way into a race. He's keeping this race leading battle just dives it up the inside into Brussels at turn 10 and just about makes it through. Contact, though, between the two may be reviewed by the stewards, or it could just be considered wheel banging and between the two. We'll see as we continue on now. DRS will be for the top 3 drivers. As Lucas Serra just about to drop out of that DRS window potentially. And on older tyres, could certainly see his chances fading away, especially without any sort of safety car or VSC. Lorenz Patton takes the fastest lap of the race, is the race leader, looks to try and put themselves into a great position. At the moment, Lorenz Patton, Aaron Minguez, Gabriel Moya, Lucas Serra, Gianluca Nolfo, that's it, there you go, finally got it right. As Gianluca Nolfo moves up to P4, McLaren put himself in a very good position here. They got a bit of an undercut in terms of time in comparison to their rivals, and it's yes, they're on the lap older tyres, but at least they are. If something goes wrong, he can certainly pick up the pieces. The Papaya car moves his way up to P4 ahead of Lucas Serra. He is beginning to struggle on those hard tyres he's been on for 8 laps. At the moment, it's a very, very difficult race for him. However, he's got a 10-second advantage over Herman Polyakov, as the Mercedes just looks to try and manage himself to the race at home. But 3 drivers who will not be managing himself, 4 drivers, is our top 4. Lorenz Patton, Aaron Miguez, Gabriel Moya, and Gianluca Nolfo. At the moment, the McLaren is just sitting outside of DRS, but these 3 are ridiculously close, all trying to recharge their battery at the same time, all trying to make sure they have enough battery for all the straights to come. Into the bus stop chicane now. On the exit, Aaron Minguez is looking to be feisty here. Same with Gabriel Moya. They're all trying to make sure they are maximising every corner entry, apex, exit. Everything from braking to throttle application has to be perfect, because if it's not, the other drivers around you will certainly do that. We now go on to the exit as we go up towards Kemmel Straight now, down the Kemmel Straight. The Williams of Ramirez gets closer and closer, but sits behind that a little bit longer, and another lap where the Williams just sit behind the Aston Martin, waiting for the right opportunity to strike. But the right opportunity may come a bit too late, and that may be when the Aston Martin is ready for him. And that is the crucial thing, is when do you go? Do you go early, knowing that you go on early and then just hoping you can hold on, or do you go at the right time, knowing that your rival on that last moment will be ready for it? And if you do it too late, it could ultimately end up costing you. It is a very, very different situation. We now go through to the end of Sector 2, down towards Stavelot, as Lorenz Patton just continues their run. At the moment, though, these 3 drivers are really just at the moment. Well, these 4 drivers, Gianluca Nolfo, is put himself almost in DRS window as we go down through towards the bus stop chicane. He is very much close to these 3 drivers as we go up towards. We actually see a battle there between the Ferrari of Claudio Diaz and Riley Blunt. As we go through Blanchimont, that's an excellent move there. Through Blanchimont from the Ferrari, excellent stuff from the Scuderia as he takes P9 away from Riley Blunt. The McLaren tries to find his way back, but can't quite do it. Go back to the battle for the lead. We see the Aston Martin, half a second gap, just tips down to just under 4.5 tenths. Then goes down a bit more to 4 tenths. Is there opportunity? No, there is certainly a recharging Williams and an RB that is not closing in either. We're going to go back to the battle now to P8. We're going to see P7. We're going to see Redmers and Claudio Diaz going to go to fight for P8. DRS for both drivers, but the Ferrari is going to certainly pull alongside as we go down towards the to Lacombe, and the Ferrari pulls it around the outside and takes the position. That is an excellent move from the Ferrari. 2 excellent moves in the space of half a lap. Ferrari, the Scuderia has put on a very nice job here. Meanwhile, Riley Blunt tries to dive up the inside of Redmond, but can't quite do it at Brussels as he goes down into no name. Now he's going to continue to apply the pressure, but can't quite do anything at this moment in time. We're going to continue on his way up. As we continue on our way up through the rest of the lap, we're going to go back to the battle for the lead. We're going to see Lorenz Patton, Aaron Dominguez, Gabriel Moya, Gianluca Nolfo leads the way, but the McLaren just kind of like, unfortunately, seems like he has a bit ahead of the pace, but can't quite consistently match the top 3 at the moment. As we go on to the final 3 laps of the race, Aston Martin, Williams, RB, McLaren, Mercedes, as Riley Blunt goes his way into P9 ahead of Redmers. So Mercedes drops down to P10 and the final points frame position, but there is a time penalty that is coming Riley Blunt's way. If Redmers can stay in that time window for the next 3 laps, he certainly will take advantage. We're going to see as the Alpine gets out of the way for yellow flags. We're going to watch as Lorenz Patton, Aaron Dominguez and Gabriel Moya continue to follow one another through towards Sector 2. They're just not really wanting to do much at this stage, so we're going to go back to someone who will be wanting to do something, and that is Claudio Diaz, as he goes to the inside on Alberto Barros. He takes the position into P7, the Ferrari, who had a drive-through penalty, no less, at this start of the race. That is something that's crucial. He jumped the start, got a drive-through penalty, pulls himself back to P7, potentially with 2 seconds left for him to gain on Herman Polyakov. Could potentially go and get P6. Currently on 5 lap old mediums, same as his rivals. He at the moment seems to have a very, very good pace and could potentially put himself into P6 by the end of this race. He's still got a 1.6 second gain to go, time to gain, and the Red Bull seems to be at a fairly good pace. It's going to be interesting to see whether the Scuderia can take the position. Meanwhile, Lorenz Patton has made a little bit of a gap to Aaron Dominguez a bit now. Maybe it caught the Williams off guard a little bit in terms of an upturn in pace, and Aaron Dominguez maybe weren't quite prepared for that, because now he's going to have to be pushing that little bit more on lap 21 when he quite probably does not want to be. And Aaron Dominguez has now kind of left himself with only really 1 opportunity left to go for a move. Gabriel Moya is right on his toes though, just under half a second behind him. As we now go and find his way into a battle for battle for the lead. 8.5 temps, just dropping down to just 7 temps by the end of the straight. However, the Aston Martin just unlocked a new level of pace, and the drivers behind were not quite expecting it, because now it starts to spread out that little bit more, and that could be crucial. We're going to go back to the battle for P7. Alberto Barros is going to try and make a move on Claudio Diaz, can't quite manage it, into Lacombe. We now exit and then on to Brussels. The Ferrari though is now within DRS striking distance of the Red Bull of Herman Polyakov. The Red Bull now really needs to get the skates on and really needs to be careful of that Scuderia, who is hunting him down in these dying moments of the race. As the Ferrari really showing what sort of pace he has had this whole time. Hold on. If we look at the fastest laps, it's very similar to Alberto Barros and his rivals. However, the 7th and 8th positions runners are very similar in terms of comparison to 2nd and 3rd, who have done low 43s, I should say, sorry, and high 42s for Lorenz Patton. We go into the final lap of the race. 2/10 between the Williams and the Aston Martin. As Aaron Ramirez puts himself into a position where he could go for an attack on the Aston Martin. Is it time or is it too late? Through Radion, through Ocean Radion, up the Kemmel straight now. Is it opportunity for the Williams to take the position, take the lead? DRS to the inside potentially. He squeezes, he gets squeezed, but is that enough? He dives out the inside and takes the position. Lorenz Patton cuts back to try and stay on the inside for the XFLA contact there between the two, but the Williams takes the lead as we go down towards Brussels. They're still side by side as we go around turn 10. Bit more contact in between though, as that causes the Williams to take the momentum and take the lead for good at this moment in time. We've got half a lap remaining in this session. Meanwhile, Claudio Diaz has made his way past Herman Poliakov. We're going to stick on with these two right now as the Aston Martin looks to have just lost the victory in the dying moments, and Aaron Ramirez seems to have just clutched it at the dying stages. We go through towards Stavolo. Is that enough for the Williams? Did they just find enough, or have they just about run out of the ERS? We're going to see whether that makes a difference. Lorenz Patton going to have the slipstream, but he's not going to have enough. He's going to be 7/10 back by the time we get to Blanchimont. And I think that is all she wrote, because Aaron Ramirez moves up towards the bus stop chicane. Oh, and there's might be another move here. Diving up the inside goes Gabriel Moya. He couldn't quite make the move stick there as we go to the line. Aaron Ramirez takes the opening race victory of Division 2 Season 10 with the Williams on top, ahead of Lorenz Patton, Gabriel Moya ahead of Gianluca Nolfo, Lucas Serra and Claudio Diaz. Lucas Serra rounds at the top 5 with Claudio Diaz in P6. Side by side action though between Herman Poliakov and Riley Bond as they both cross the line. P8 and P9 soon to be P9 and P10 after Redmers crosses the line ahead of them after penalties. And that is our race. Excellent racing from the drivers today. Excellent strategy from the top runners and throughout the field in general. Excellent fighting, very clean overall, and it has ended in Aaron Ramirez taking victory in the opening round of the season. Oh, that is it. Here's our podium now. We are going to quickly skip over that because we need to get some information here. Aaron Ramirez, race winner, fastest lap to Lorenz Patton. A driver of the day, Riley Blunt. Most overtakes go to Claudio Diaz. Cleanest driver, Alberto Barros. That is that 5. And then we see, here we are, Aaron Ramirez taking victory ahead of Lorenz Patton, Gabriel Moya in P3, ahead of Gianluca Nolfo and Lucas Serra, who ran up the top time. Claudio Diaz and Alberto Barros in P6, P7, ahead of Red Merge, Riley Blunt, Herman Poliakov, Milinsky, Unai Vega, Diego Ferrer, and then DNFs go to AZR Vettel, Brandon Clark, and Matthew De Jesus. Export results. Quickly, that would be a good idea. And then we quickly go to that. So just scroll through that quickly, just so if you really need to slow it down, and there you go. That is everything there. Yeah, that's got that as well. There's the pit stops for you. But that is the race results for you, ladies and gentlemen. That is the race for today. And that is all she wrote. Thank you all for watching. We will be back next week for the US Grand Prix in Kota for round 2. That'll be next week on November 4th. Then Monaco, and then break week, and then we're back for Monaco, and then Austria, and then Canada, Britain, Mexico, and then a bit of a break over Christmas before we come back at the start of the new year for Saudi Arabia, Brazil, and Abu Dhabi to round out the season. Thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week. I'll see you soon.